Good morning. I'm Kevin Walker, Senior Vice President of Public Policy for the Overland Park Chamber. This interview is being conducted on behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, comprised of the Chambers of Commerce in Johnson County and the Greater Kansas City Chamber. Jointly, we host a site, votejoco.com, which is a nonpartisan site where voters can learn more about the candidates for public office. This morning, I'm with John Miller, Republican candidate for United States Senate. John, thanks for joining us today. We know that our members are eager to learn more about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office.
Well, I'll do that. First of all, thanks for including me in your process. I appreciate the platform and the opportunity, Kevin. The reason I decided to jump into this race kind of at the last minute is it's not about me. I'm at a point in my life where things have gone well for me, and I could retire today and be a happy guy. I'm concerned about the future for my three kids and the future of America, right? They're 20-something young adults, and as I look ahead and look at the path for the country, it's more than concerning. It prompted me to, get up and jump in this race, because I think there's some pivotal issues that are coming up now that moving ahead, they need to be addressed. And one of the reasons I've gotten the race is I don't hear my competitors or the other candidates talking about some of these issues that I think are important for Kansas.
Good. Well, I appreciate that. Why don't we jump right into our questions?
Okay.
And tell us what you see as the top three business policy issues facing our country right now.
Well, the top three business issues, I would say coronavirus is front and center. It's basically taken our red hot economy and thrown ice water on it. So COVID is a concern. I think the issue about COVID is, this is where government really needs to be in sync for the people, right? Because I think there's a number of depending on where you look. For example, if you look at the Kansas Health Department, Missouri Health Department, CDC, they've all got different messages. So consistency is important with COVID, right? And I think we all can do a little thing right, if that's wearing a mask or social distancing. Together, when we do things right, it adds up to a long-term positive result. Second, policy issue from my standpoint, one of my hot buttons is infrastructure on a national basis. And when you look at infrastructure, my background is selling trucks, Ford trucks, for the last 26 years. I am acutely aware of how involved an infrastructure project is. Most of us see it on the highway when we drive past the detours, right? But when you stop and think about what it entails, from design work, right, engineering work, to cement, heavy equipment, to workers buying gloves, new Carhartt trousers, right? Huge economic trickle down, and those projects are needed. One, bridges need repair, roads need repair in America. And for Kansas, it's a big boon for the state of Kansas, because Kansas has the third largest state highway system in the U.S., right? So when you combine the state highway system with interstates 35 and 70, a national infrastructure bill, which I believe is in the interest of both parties, it's kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, is a big boon to the state of Kansas. The third thing, I'm going to kind of mix two of them together. I don't hear people talking about the national debt and inflation. And those two things, they kind of go together in my mind, because future inflation on top of a $26 trillion national debt, it will strangle America. It's exponential, right? You and I might think about a mortgage rate in terms of a 0.5%, right? That impacts our monthly mortgage payment. Well, just think about it as $26 trillion and 0.5% against that number. That is something that nobody really seems to grasp. And I think the last time I looked, if Americans were to individually write a check to try to clear the national debt, it's in excess of $70,000 per individual. So people can relate to that number, right? Because they get it. That's $70,000 net after taxes that I need to pay to eliminate the national debt. I think that the scope of it, when you talk about it in a macro number, is just so large that people can't grasp it. But when you boil it down and say, here's your bill for your portion of national debt, write us a check for 70 grand, then it starts to click. So I think it warrants attention. I don't hear people talking about it.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. And tell us a little bit about your views on federal tax policy.
My views, I'll tell you this, I'm a process guy. A lot of things that we do, we have protocols and processes. When I look at the federal taxation, it is way too complex. I am more of a keep it simple kind of guy. I'm in favor of a flat tax that everybody pays. I think it's the best way to do it. I know there's a lot of discussion about, well, that impacts people on the lower end of the social economical spectrum more than a guy on the high side. I just see, when you really look at it, I just think it's way too complex. And anytime there's complexity, if you have more rules in the game, there's more opportunities to find and exploit the rules. So simpler is better when it comes to taxation, in my mind.
Okay. You talked about this a little bit, but what would you propose, if anything, to provide further relief to Kansas businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, to encourage recovery and economic growth?
Well, I think one is the message needs to be consistent. For Kansans, one of the things I think you ought to think about doing is if a business in this environment is willing to make a capital investment, credits are a good thing, right? That encourages spending, which in turn encourages job development. I think the state of Kansas would net out ahead if they encourage capital spending in projects. And that's the road I would try to go down.
Okay. And here's another one I know that's close to your heart. Tell us a little bit about your views on long-term funding solutions for our transportation infrastructure.
Well, national infrastructure, it needs to be done. The roads and bridges are in dire need of repair all across the country. So in my view, and if you look on my website, that's one of my legislative agenda items is national infrastructure bill. I think it's a low-hanging fruit kind of deal for both parties. I think the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, this is actually something they can agree on, that it needs to be done. And for the state of Kansas, huge economic boon for the state of Kansas with the third largest state highway system and interstates 35 and 70. If there's long-term funding for road repair, Kansas benefits tremendously across the board, all the way from engineering work, heavy construction, concrete, asphalt, to individual workers with gloves, Carhartt trousers, new pickup trucks. Big trickle down benefits of a national infrastructure bill. I'm a big proponent of that.
Talk to me a little bit about your views on international trade and tariffs.
That's pretty easy. I sell trucks for a living. There is no money for second place. Whether I finish second or fifth in the process, pays the same. First place pays every time. When it comes to trade, and for the state of Kansas, when you look at our agriculture products and you look at our manufacturing products, Kansas must have access to free and open markets. So when we start talking about tariffs, I'm all ears, because tariffs can be a real economic threat to Kansas and the state of Kansas.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about national immigration policy. What are your views on that? And do you support employment-based immigration reforms to assist with workforce shortages?
Okay, a couple of questions. So I would tell you that I'm in favor of border control. I think it's only prudent to know who's coming in and out of the country. That's a reasonable expectation. I will tell you, I am all in favor of immigrant workers coming into the Kansas, America on work permits, because quite frankly, they're needed. They do a job, they fill a job that apparently some Americans don't want or aren't willing to take. So I am in favor of that.
Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about your views on the federal government's role in our healthcare system.
That's a tough one. The argument is, should the government be in healthcare? Yes or no, right? My opinion is, if they're taking money out of your paycheck, they're in the healthcare business. Okay? When I visit with healthcare providers and say, hey, what do you think about healthcare in America? What they've told me is a couple of things. One is, healthcare in America, there probably needs to be some kind of basic level national healthcare if the government wants to sponsor that sort of program. But that program needs to be implemented and designed by the healthcare workers. So the doctors, nurses, hospital administrators, the people that are working within the system need to design that program, not the insurance companies. The healthcare providers I've talked to said, we feel like we are hamstrung by what the insurance company will or will not pay for. And that is I don't like that. I think what it doesn't address is the customer. I'm kind of a customer focused guy selling vehicles, right? I don't think Americans are treated as customers, but I think the healthcare workers want to treat them as customers. But they need to design and implement their own system, not the insurance companies.
Okay. And the last question I have for you, John, is what do you think distinguishes you most from your opponents in the race?
I think what distinguishes me most is I'm not a politician. I've learned a lot about the political process by being a candidate. And I'll tell you that I'm not going to do it again. If I were elected senator for Kansas, I'd do one term. I think what differentiates me from the others is I don't hear a message where people say, if I'm elected senator, I want to leave it better than I found it. I hear among the candidates, I don't hear a clear, consistent message that, hey, I'm in for one term and I'm going to get it done. Whatever I do, I hope it's better than when I got there, and I'm out.
Oh, great. I appreciate you taking the time to answer the questions. Do you have any closing comments you want to make to everyone?
Yeah, Kevin, I think the one thing that I told you, the process has been enlightening and interesting. The one thing I would encourage everybody to do, and I hope everybody does, regardless of who you're voting for, is get out there and vote. I was amazed. I was telling a group of people last night, I was amazed by the amount of apathy from people that I wouldn't have expected them to tell me that they don't have an interest in politics. Oh, I don't want to hear about that. Oh, I don't care about that. You know what? I can't control that. That doesn't impact me. It really does. And I think we all are obligated as citizens to participate in the process, because quite frankly, it's a privilege. And so, yeah, my closing message would be for everybody, your opinion counts, make it count, exercise your privilege, and get out there and vote.
John, that's a great segue to my closing thoughts. As I just want to remind everyone that advance voting by mail begins on Wednesday, July 15th. Advance voting in person begins on Monday, July 20th. And of course, the primary election day, Tuesday, August 4th, our polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and encourage everyone to get out and vote. So John, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you again for the opportunity to participate, Kevin.